Hello there again. Welcome to Market Insights this beautiful but rainy Wednesday morning in the city of Lagos. I am David Chinedu. Many thanks for keeping a date with us. Now, African tech startups in the first half of this year secured $780 million in funding, the lowest amount in almost 4 years since late 2020. Now, it represents a major decrease of 31% compared to the second half of last year, 2023, and also a stark 57% decline compared to the first half of last year as well. Now, this is typically a problem for most tech startups, as funding essentially for any venture whatsoever is critical. Now, geographically, Africa, or rather the Big Four, talking about Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, and Egypt, have mostly dominated the funding landscape. But as of last year, Nigeria lost its top position in African startup funding to Kenya, with Kenyan startups attracting approximately $800 million, the largest amount on the continent. This essentially, as you will know, poses a significant challenge to tech startups in the country and the continent, of which the question right now is how it can be tackled. This morning, we are talking about funding challenges for African tech startups and the practical, or if you like, practicable solutions therein with the experts who will be joining us. But I'm not alone on the program this morning. I've got my beautiful co-host joining me here with me, of course, Lovina Emah. Good morning, Lovina.
Good morning, David. And it's great to be here as we talk about these issues affecting Africa and affecting the tech startups in our country. As you know, we have a very young population in Africa, and most of them are very internet savvy and tech savvy. So we definitely need to work on our technology in this part of the world. We need to be, I would say at best, we should try to be at par with our European counterparts, because the world, technology is not going to wait for anybody. We need to adapt before we become extinct as a continent. So this is a great topic for discussion this morning.
Absolutely, indeed.
Thank you for watching the program. So we have two guests joining us virtually this morning to discuss these issues about declining funding with African tech startups. Now, my first guest is Daniel Chinagozi. He is the founder, CEO, Innovation Hub Growth, and he has also joined us virtually. My second guest is Adeshina Ajayi. He is the founder and CEO of Digital Focus LLC, where he is bridging the blockchain knowledge gap and building blockchain solutions for Africans and people of African descent. So thank you for joining me or joining us on Market Insights this morning. Daniel.
Thank you, Lovina. Thank you, Lovina. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.
You both on the program.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so let's start now. So yes, as my colleague David mentioned at the introduction, there is a decline. Nigeria used to be number one in terms of funding for African tech startups, but that position, they are gradually being taken over by Kenya. So first of all, let me start with Daniel now. What are the primary factors contributing to the significant decline in African tech fundraising?
Well, I want to drop it out there. It's not just about Africa. Globally, okay, there was a global economic condition that led to the downturn of funding globally. Because the funding we get in Africa is as a result of the funds that come from other parts of the world too. Okay, investors, VCs, and most investors are from everywhere in the world. So whenever there was a rising interest rate globally, that it led to a lot of reduction of the available capital that was ready to come to Africa. And a lot of investors also grew risk averse because some of them had invested in the past, and then it was becoming an issue. And then they stopped investing as much. Like there was a huge investment in certain areas like fintech, blockchain technology, a lot of technology startups got a lot of investment, but investors started losing money. They were not making as much as they were expected to make. And then they were growing risks averse. They were trying to draw back. And then there was a lot of market saturation. Okay. At some point, people were definitely at some point looking for the right startups to invest in. And when there is an issue of market saturation, you know that funds will start looking into other areas. Okay. And people started seeing other industries, other clients that were growing faster than Africa. For example, people check growth rate of company and countries before they invest. And then there was constant change in regulations across Africa, especially in Nigeria. Okay, you invest in a startup today, the next day, CBN or any other organization makes a rule, it affects your investment. So you rather take the investment elsewhere. So, and then political instability. You know, last year was a year of election, and 2023 was election for us in Nigeria. So people were not sure. Okay, so it delayed investment coming in. If you check track first quarter this year, we have started having investments come back again. A lot of things have started changing. So political instability, these are some of the things that affected the investment landscape across Africa. And Nigeria is not immune from it. Okay, it started from a global thing, and then it came down. And then a lot of people wanted to be sure before they invest. Okay, a smart investor is difficult for a smart investor to invest in an election year or to invest when there is a crisis. I know that during when there was a protest in Nigeria around EdSARS, I know a particular investor that left the country because of that experience. So whenever there is crisis, investors get affected, okay? And investors are investing in Nigeria. Before, investors were investing across board. You noticed the year you were under review before last year, there were a lot of investment in agri-tech, agricultural businesses and all that. When the likes of Frank Crowdy, a lot of other tracks that are not fintech were getting a lot of investment. But with the insecurity that affected farmers a lot, investment in agriculture, which Northern Nigeria gets the largest chunk, dropped. So whenever there's insecurity in any part of the country, it affects the type of investment that comes into the areas that. So the decline of fundraising across in Africa was attributed by a lot of things attributed to it. So it's not just one thing. That's what I want to say right now. Yeah.
Right. So Daniel, can you hear me? This is just to confirm if you can. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, I can hear you.
Now, you've spoken about some of the causative factors. I would want to harp on some of the things you've mentioned. You mentioned insecurity. You mentioned political instability. These are quite, evident as you were, and it's understandable if you see that those are, critical causative factors. However, regulations, on the other hand, many would argue that regulations are simply guardrails per se, are not necessarily hurdles or impediments, as the case may be. But you've attributed that as well to, some of what's going on with funding and the tech startup space. Do you share the sentiment, one I just mentioned, that regulations aren't necessarily put in place to make the business environment difficult for ventures?
Okay. Well, let me explain this to you. A lot of investors invested in companies that were addressing things like financial inclusion, so that you get fintech startups. Can you hear me?
Please go on.
Okay.
Yes, Daniel, we can hear you. Please go on.
Oh, beautiful. Fintech startups that were pushing products or projects that targeted at people in the lower ranks of the economy. And for that to happen, they deployed, like, for example, I will use the likes of MoneyPoint, PalmPay, and others. They deployed a lot of their solutions, and then they got a lot of people to come on board. Now, an investor is investing because startups have given them numbers to say, we want to reach 200 million Nigerians. See how we intend to reach them. When we get, immediately, if this person has an account on BVN, which is what Nigeria was about. If you have an account on BVN, we can open an account for you. We give you a POS terminal, and then you service your community, for example. And then all of a sudden, there was a regulation divert to say, no, BVN is not enough. All these people must be registered businesses. It doesn't happen everywhere in the world that if you want to do micro, there's opportunity for micro businesses to play without the basic functional registration. They can do a registration at their level, either with a cooperative or either with such certain organizations that are local, but you're not placing micro organizations with certain regulations. For example, at some point you notice that a lot of things changed, a lot of regulations. I'm not against regulation, but what we're saying is regulation mismatch. You don't make regulations without bringing the players on the table, so that the players can say, okay, give us this time, see how we're going to walk through this, or let's do it this way, so that they can bring an innovation ecosystem where what people are funding is innovation. Okay, and when you bring in thoughts and regulations like that, you are reducing innovation, you are reducing people's ability to innovate. Now, instead of us trying to capture the market, instead of us trying to build our services, we come back again to start redesigning. How do we work so that this innovation regulation will not affect us? You know, for example, in the past, it was easier for an organization to use another organization's license to do business. For example, if I'm a technology company, I might not necessarily need a banking license. I might work with someone that has a banking license, and then they provide me the service. And all of a sudden, you hear you get one email from the person you are using their license or you are using their platform that CBN has said, we can no longer provide this service to you. Say, why? What's the reason? And you won't hear any reason. It's a new regulation. So if we have stable regulations around our banking system so that people can actually innovate around the stable regulations, not today there's a change, tomorrow there's a change, things like that has actually affected investments a lot. Okay, people are scared. I know investors, I won't call their name, that tell me today, Daniel, we are scared of investing in Nigeria, and we need to do better. Yeah.
Okay, yes, thank you for that, Daniel. Yes, I understand what you're saying. But okay, yes, with government regulations, the government is still trying to understand tech with everything in its digital currencies, everything it entails, the Internet of Things. They're still trying to understand it, even though the younger generation here understands it very well. But let me move on to Adeshina Ajayi now. I know that you have trained people in blockchain technology, in all sorts of digital technologies now. So I want to ask for your thoughts on this now. What role can the government and policymakers play in supporting African tech startups so that it doesn't look like they're bringing up these regulations to stifle them? So what role can the government and policymakers play in all of this? So Adeshina.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me once again. All right, so I'll just buttress some of the points that Daniel raised earlier. You see, when it comes to tech ecosystem and any other sector in the country, everything rises and falls on the government of that country. Trust me, on the government. There's really nothing you can do without the backing, adequate backing of the government of a nation. Just what I'm saying. So now, when you talk about regulations, it's important that government makes adequate regulations, and then that will enable for a credible economy, because investors, especially foreign investors, they want to be sure that the country or the continent where they are putting their money is safe and they are protected. You know, so the government has a lot to do on this. You don't just change policies, you know, anyhow at the speed of thought. Now, one way to do this is the government, first of all, the government have to appoint leaders, you know, who have tech background, and when they, you know, into ICT offices or ICT ministries. You know, the Nigerian government has done good in that regard, and it's important that other governments, you know, of other countries follow suit. You know, appointing Minister Bosun Tijani, who was a tech guru, it's a very important, was a very critical move, you know, that this present administration, but we can do more. We can do more. So it's important to create enabling environment for investors to thrive, and that's one of the ways to do that. Then the government can, create tax incentives for startup founders. And one way to do that is you can create like a tax waiver for employees, of startup founders, maybe for a particular number of years from the time they started, until they scale. That would, largely help the startup founders, to manage their funds and their money, right? So also create enabling environment for businesses to thrive, in place of grants, incubators, startups, accelerators. It's very important. And then we need to encourage more local funding. We don't have to keep depending on foreign investment. It's important that, more people who have the capacity within our local communities begin to, come together and, and fund this startup. Like Daniel said earlier, the high interest rate and the global inflation affected, the global market. As a matter of fact, in the last, recent years, the global funding for startups has dropped by about 6%. So looking at that, you see that when the dollar, it's not stable, or when because of the strength of the dollar to local currency, it's going to affect, investment in local surroundings and local communities. So the government can do a lot more, to aid these people and to help startups, to scale and to do well in their businesses. Yeah.
Now, Adeshina, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Right.
Now, we're still going to stay on the issue, albeit symmetrically. Let's talk about our ease of doing business, or the ease that our business environment provides for investors to do, to carry out their activities. Recently, particularly in May, two companies talking about Microsoft and the G42 Corporation, that's the Emirati organization, announced that they will be setting up a $1 billion geothermal plant in Kenya, a data center, beg your pardon, in Kenya. And this followed briefly after Microsoft itself announced its removal, or its relocation, if you like, of the ADC, the African Development Center, from Nigeria, which led to the massive loss of jobs. To about 200 jobs or thereabouts were lost. Now, I'm going to ask you a two-pronged question. One, what does this say about our ease of doing business, or our business environment here in the global scene? Two, what exactly, what sort of impact has it had, or would it have, on the tech startup ecosystem in the country?
All right. Thank you for the question. Now, I'll start with the second question. So the impact with declining in fund, would have many effects, on the businesses. One is there's going to be massive layoffs. Massive layoffs. Businesses need money to thrive, right? Businesses need money to thrive and to acquire and retain credible talent. So when there is insufficient funding, and there's going to be massive layoffs, we've seen that happening, with the global, tech environment, and then the local tech environment. There's been massive layoffs, and then there's reduced investment in innovation. It costs a lot of money to engage in research and development. Before you can build, an innovative product, you have to be involved in serious research and development, and that costs money. So, in the absence of funding, or in decline of funding, there's going to be, reduced investment in innovation, and then there's going to be brain drain. The best brains are going to leave that particular ecosystem or the region and go to, a place where a more vibrant ecosystem or region where, their inputs can be valued, or where, they can be adequately rewarded. We've seen that happen, especially in Nigeria in the recent years. A lot of, people are living, traveling abroad, because they feel that, okay, there's a lot of happenings in the country. So where their skills needs to be adequately rewarded, brain drain. And then lastly, there's this investors' confidence being eroded, right? So when a particular ecosystem or a region is lacking funding, nothing is happening there. And so other investors are looking at productivity to make investment decisions, right? So when, nothing is happening because there's no money on ground, it's going to, erode, other investors' confidence, investors who want to come into the game and put in money, they are skeptical, so it's really important. And these are some of the impacts of decline in funding.
Move to Daniel. Okay. Yes. Okay. Yes. Yes. Thank you for that, Adeshina Ajayi. Okay. Let me just move the conversation to Daniel. Now, yes, I understand everything you've said so far. That's referring to Adeshina, with governments, how they have been regulating, and also the ease of doing business, also investor confidence. Now, these things are very, very key in not just in our country, and also this continent, in Africa too. So now, what strategies can because these three sectors now, transportation, logistics, and fintech. Now, these three sectors are where you have a lot of young people creating startups, creating apps that they can start their own tech businesses in these three areas now. So now, how can investor confidence be built to assure them that, okay, that the government is not trying to stifle young people when they go into these areas in tech, just to make things easier for people, and thereby just to make things easier for people. So now, how can we build or increase investor confidence in these three key areas: transportation, logistics, and fintech? So I'll start with Daniel first of all.
Okay, thank you very much. One thing I know that must happen is that we need to diversify our source of funding. We cannot depend only on international funding as the only source of funding. VCs don't do that. We need to think in terms of crowdfunding. CBN and SEC have been fighting against crowdfunding for as long as we know. Okay, they want you to go through all those processes. I'm not against processes, but the issue is that some of these things stifle innovation. But let me give you an example. A number of startups in my community, iJob is in Abia State, in Aba. A number of startups in my community started their funding from friends and family investing in them. Okay, and in the transport sector, in the logistics sector, some of them in the fintech space. I'm going to give a clear example. There's a transport company that is called Enviable Motors. Enviable Motors is a young guy that started his transport business by doing tricycle business and all that. At some point, he started bringing in his friends, and they started investing as small as you can imagine. We need to understand that local investment and partnerships actually still works. It's just that it's good on the TV. This person raised this amount, this person raised this amount. I wanted to even tell us that the amount of money we were saying that was raised in the African tech ecosystem is far below what is actually in the investments that went through. But these are the ones that went to the news to say how much they've raised. Okay. For example, there are a number of startups that got funded in my community that were never advertised. The amount of money they raised were never advertised. These are the people that will go to the news. And there are a lot of founders that no longer put their raise in the news. The raise you are calculating with are the raise that you hear over the news most times. But it's okay. That's for another day. Gavai's Logistics. So is a logistics company started by a student as in a school, but today they have branches across more than 10 cities in Nigeria. How did they raise fund to do this? They got people to invest. They want to buy a bike for logistics. They put it out there. We want to buy a bike. This is the cost. Who wants to invest? And the number of people who invest in that bike. And then they share revenue and share profit. Okay, we need to sit down as Africans. There's a method of fundraising that we were used to. VC is alien, is new to us. Let's call family meeting. For example, I've done a number of investments in agriculture, a number of investments in fintech that were actually a lot of friends. We came together, we put an amount together, and then we were sharing revenue, we were sharing profit. Okay, so we need to understand that. Then we need to, there's a role of technology innovation hubs they need to play as community, ISN networks, AfriLab networks. Well, how do we play that role? if for a startup to grow its branches, so we need, when a VC invests in you with an African fund, you set up in Lagos, the next thing he wants you to go to Abuja, the next thing he wants you to go to Accra, he wants you to go to Nairobi, he wants you to go to Cairo. And then he's telling you what to use the investment he has given to you to do, to expand to countries that you don't have strong footing in. And you see that your strength will start going down. Now, I want to advise tech startups, especially Lagos startups, my brother. What people need to do is to think in terms of the other secondary cities in Nigeria. How can we increase our place in these secondary cities? We need to think in terms of our local and regional markets. This will attract much more investors, because if your product is in Aba, for example, in Umuahia, in other locations, local investors in that area that are interested in investing will think in terms of talking to you. But if your investment is in Lagos, after Lagos, you move to Nairobi, okay? You can only get investors that are thinking in terms of investing in Lagos. So we need to be open to that investment. We need to work with innovation hubs to scale. For example, if you are scaling your office to Aba right now, you don't need to build a new office. You can leverage on ecosystem provisions like what we have in our hub. You can hire people within our hub systems, okay? And there are ISM member hubs across the 36 states of the country. We need to leverage on what we have, okay? We need to build solid business models that look local. Enough of copying international business plans and thinking that it will work here. I'm not against you listening to your investors, but your investors might not understand the local business as much as it is here. So my advice to us is that we need to look local, we need to look inward, and our government needs to improve grants. Now, grant is not always money, okay? I don't want to compare Nigeria to China and to US, to UK, and to all those guys. I want to compare Nigeria to countries like Pakistan. Now, if you see how Pakistan's government is investing in startups within their area, they will help them with some of the basic things that would have costed investors, founders money, like feasibility study reports. There's tons of feasibility study reports across different areas. So if you want to do you want to start a startup in Pakistan today, you have feasibility study report that gives you idea of the local market and an idea of the opportunities for export and tells you things to do to get ready for that. Now, that's what his Nigerian counterpart will spend money doing. The government provides them legal services, consulting services, financial services at zero or little cost. Okay, so founders go and leverage provisions that have been made by government. Okay, so we need to start giving opportunities, because there are, and then when you give grants to grantopreneurs, you know, they are grantopreneurs, people, their work is to sit down and they know how to write for grants and get grants. Why the real business people are busy focusing on their businesses? They are not even seeing those news. For example, as a farmer, I might be in the bush and then they'll call for grants for agro farms. And then those that are always sitting on the internet that are grantopreneurs will write for it and get it. Me, that is a farmer that is in the bush, I've not seen it. So we need to structure well such that we know we fund in industries, not by applications. For example, you know people that are playing in the fintech space. You know people that are playing in certain spaces. Okay, you are able to fund the industries. Fund the industries. If you want the AI industry to grow in Nigeria, find out those that are playing in that space, fund the industry. And if you fund the industry, it will get around all the members of the industry. So I believe that we can actually push these things and make it work.
All right, Daniel. Thank you very much, Daniel. Thank you very much, Daniel. Let's come to you, Adeshina. I'm just going to piggyback off of what Daniel has spoken about. He's pretty much gone through a lot of some of the errors or mistakes, if you like, that some startups make that could hinder the possibility of funding and growth, as he were. But I also want to come through another angle. In the bid to get funding, some of these organizations are undervalued by the potential investors or prospective investors, as he were. So in your view, as a stakeholder, how exactly can local startups reposition themselves such that when they're on the negotiating table, they're not selling themselves short? Suffice it to ask, how can they strategically negotiate so that they don't appear to lose value or to have a lower valuation of themselves on the table with the potential investor?
All right, thank you so much. The word is due diligence. Due diligence. All right. Local startups needs to do their due diligence. Understand the business you're doing. Understand what the solution. The truth is, a lot of these startups, just run their businesses with no real demonstrable solution. All right. So what they are doing is they have a perceived solution, and then they are multiplying valuations just to get funds. We've heard about cases in recent times where businesses get millions of dollars, and in a couple of months they're shutting down, and then you wonder what's happening, right? So it means that in the real sense of the word, all they're after is money. So people really need to sit down and begin to create real solution, real product or service with demonstrable market potential. That's really vital. Investors are watching. When the certain investor is giving you money, and then in a couple of months or years you're shutting down, it's going to affect other startups from that region or from that ecosystem. All right. And then another thing is to be very strategic with timing. Timing is everything in scaling and in attracting investors. All right. So be sure that by the time you are trying to get investors to invest in your business, you are at the point where you just needed money. You have grown your business to a point where all you need at that point is money, to grow the business and to scale. But a lot of times we don't do those due diligence. You don't get to that point, and then you go stuff for funds, and then a problem you didn't envisage happens, and then before you know it, you're gone. Founders needs to be more prudent too. They need to be very prudent and accountable. You can't just receive funding and increase your operational costs, and you're spending money anyhow, leaving la vida loca on investors' funds. All right, we've had cases recently that are not actually, interesting. So a founder, after getting a certain funding, start paying themselves some unimaginable amount of salary every month until the money is gone. Start living some lifestyle. That's not the essence of raising funds. The essence is to create product, real life product that people can use, and help people on a day-to-day. So, and then they need to start leveraging network and relationships. All right, VC funding is beyond money. People are too fixated on money. It's beyond money. The council, the guys, the leadership is important too, right? So when you get funds from investors from foreign countries, like US, UK, and in China and other places, countries like with over 1,800 unicorns, and then bringing money to Africa, with less than 10 unicorns. So it's important that you are accountable and you make right use and judicious use for the money with which for your business and for the purpose with which you're giving the money. So thank you. That's what I say about that.
Okay, yes. Yes, funding is very key. Yes, and founders or startup owners need to be very prudent. Yes, you're very correct on that. But can we just discuss this briefly now? Most of the time in the larger scale, when we look at our whole world, Africa is usually regarded as being technology, like we're not really at the forefront of things technologically, and they say Africa is still backward in the technology space. So now looking at where we are right now in this country, yes, I believe we have grown very far. We have gone with the next generation coming up is quite tech savvy now. So this is for Adeshina now. How will the now with this decline that was announced, yes, it's not just affecting Africa, it's also affecting other tech startups in other parts of the world. But let's look at our continent first of all. Now, this decline in tech fundraising now, do you think is going to affect the competitiveness when it comes to other African tech startups and other startups in other parts of the world and our global positioning? How will do you think it's going to affect us globally when we look at how far we have gone and then what is currently happening? There's a decline in tech funding right now. So is it going to affect us globally in not just with the ranking, but in terms of how we have these wonderful ideas, but we need funding? So how is Africa going to be seen right now in this global space? Let me start with Adeshina first.
Okay, thank you very much. So very briefly, I would say yes. The answer to that is yes, because actually, money is like the blood of every business. So the question is the money coming from foreign investors or local investors, right? Whichever the case, the absence of money would affect, the way we are being perceived, will affect our operations, will affect our productivity, and then ecosystem maturity. There's been a trajectory between 2015 and 2022. 2022, the year 2022 was the peak, all right, of investors funding for African tech ecosystem, right? I mean, it was a very booming one at the time before this present decline. Now, the idea is for that expectation, you expected that, okay, when money is being pushed into a particular ecosystem or a particular region, there's a lot of bootstrapping happening, a lot of, growth is happening. But when the money is, now coming down, it's really going to affect it. So it takes a building stage for the system to mature, to ecosystem to mature, right? So when there's lack of funding or decline in funding, it's going to delay the maturity of the ecosystem. And so it's going to affect global competitiveness, So, I mean, yeah, there's going to be a long-term implication of reduced fundings. Right. That's my opinion on that.
Daniel, now, okay, so Daniel, what strategies can be employed to maintain this momentum and growth for African tech startups to continue to increase their potentials and make themselves more competitive when compared with other tech startups in other parts of the world? What can they do to continue to maintain momentum and growth?
Okay. One thing that I need to address is we need to know our place in the technology space. There are some countries that are investing a whole lot in research and development. What we need to focus on Africa is to see how technology can be used to solve our local problems. If we can focus on using technology to solving our local problems, then technology will become viable for us in Africa. I'm not sure we should think in terms of it's okay to want to build our own AI models, okay? But as much as it is okay to do that, but it's rather important to you think in terms of how to use AI or blockchain technology to improve on education system, improve on agriculture, improve on the issues we have at hand, okay? And then we need to focus on revenue as against focusing on equity. Because what they've taught us in the past is when you want to raise investment, grow your equity so that another investor buy you out. No. If you want to be competitive, if you want to negotiate and get good value for your investment, or for you not be priced low, you must be a revenue generating company. And then we must first go for local investors. If you have local investors, experienced board, when the global investors see who is in your board and see who you are doing business with, see that you are in, for example, people are in a hurry to move to other African countries, and they forget that there are other bigger Nigerian cities that are not Lagos. For example, Kanu is bigger than 60% of other African countries. Okay, so the southeast south of Nigeria is a 60 million captive population. There are few African countries that are at that level. So if we need to really make sure that investment works, let's get investment to get around Nigeria. If you get investment in Lagos, expand to other parts of the country. Okay, Lagos is a ready market, yes, but we need to invest in building the market. If you build the rest of the market, Nigeria's 200 million population will become a buying population. Right now, that population is a census population. We need to increase our buying population. And how do we do this? We do this by educating the market. For example, we have a lot of people that have not even embraced the use of technology. Okay, some people that have not accepted technology. Some people that, okay, for example, what happened in our banking system that one of the banks went down, it has also eroded some people's trust in banking. What happened in some investment in some fintechs that some people lost their money, it has eroded people's trust in technology. So we need to be stable. Let's focus on stability, focus on build strong value propositions, okay? Build some, and then leverage networking and visibility. Let's let people get to know us. Let give people visa to attend global events and showcase what is happening here, and then grow the ecosystem strongly. And then if the ecosystem grows, definitely investment.
All right, thank you very much, Daniel. Because of time, very, very quickly, Adeshina, very, very quickly, if you could answer this, just slightly tangential matter, but still, of course, within the ambit of the conversation, there's been a disparity in, funding for female startups, as you were. We're talking about the issues of gender imbalance. As a matter of fact, recent data shows that a mere 15% of the total funding went to ventures with at least one female founder, and only 8% to companies with a female CEO. Now, essentially, this highlights the disparity I just spoke about, a challenge which, certainly needs addressing. So how do we circumvent this? Just very quickly so we can round up.
All right, thank you. So there needs to be a balance. I personally believe, like Daniel said earlier, there are a lot of people who are getting fundings that do not make the news. I've been following the female startup ecosystem in Nigeria. And honestly, I see that they are doing so much, but getting so little in terms of attention, So we need to sort of balance it. I saw the data, and we need to sort of balance, that equation. If we're trying to talk about inclusivity, we need to, everybody, it's not about, it's a human thing, all right? So it's not about man or woman, it's a human, we're all human. And so women are rising to the position of leadership in different sectors in Nigeria and Africa presently, and their efforts needs to be rewarded, And so we need funders, investors and VCs, and government and private sectors, people who are investing in businesses needs to really consider the effort that these women are bringing on board on the table. In fact, a lot of all these male founders who are receiving grants or funding for their startups, they have, in their team, women who are doing amazing stuff there. So their efforts needs to be more pronounced and, and well appreciated. Right.
Okay, thank you very much to my guest, to our guests, Daniel Chinagozi and Adeshina Ajayi. Thank you so much for joining us in this discussion on how to improve on funding for African tech startups, and also to let's reduce this decline, and also how we can use these technology that we are developing every day to improve our country, to improve different sectors of our country, like Daniel rightfully said, our education, our agricultural sector also. So thank you so much for your input into this discussion, gentlemen. It's really appreciated. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to having you both again on Market Insights.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's our time on today's program as we discuss African tech funding, by how it has reduced greatly, and how Kenya is currently the country that has overtaken Nigeria in this sector. So hopefully from our insights, from our guest input into this discussion, it will definitely, the practical solutions shared here will definitely be put into practice by tech startups who are trying to raise funds also. Thank you so much for watching Market Insight this morning. It's been great discussing these issues with you. Do remember to put your comments on our social media platforms, and also to share what your thoughts are on this discussion. Thank you very much for watching the program. And to my co-host, David.
Many thanks for joining us this morning. It's been quite the insightful edition, I would say. But of course, there's more. And if you would, of course, always stay tuned to your television, to SOUQ News, that is, and join us in the next episode of Market Insight. Many thanks. I am David Chinedu. Until next time, do have a wonderful day and stay tuned to SOUQ News Television.